and welcome to my channel if this is the first video of mine that you are watching, but if it is not, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about my favorite series that I discovered in 2023. If you have already watched my Whiskies, which is my best books roundup of 2023, then this will come as no surprise, but I discovered Blade of Secrets and Master of Iron by Tricia Levenseller last year and absolutely fell in love with this quick, cozy, easy to read fantasy romance duology. So today I am going to take some time to talk a little bit more about these two books and sing their praises just because I loved them so much that I felt as if they deserved their own video on this channel. But first, I am bringing back my cocktail pairings to go along with my video. So while I discussed my distilled reading of the Bladesmith duology, I'm also going to be enjoying a distilled beverage. And this here is a blackberry lemonade whiskey made very simply using some blackberry whiskey that is a seasonal release for this year here in Canada, along with some lemonade. And I'm not gonna lie, I have enjoyed this cocktail a time or two over the last few weeks, and I have been absolutely loving it. So if you are someone who enjoys lemonade, this is a really nice way to spritz up your lemonade to turn it into a cocktail for the evening or late afternoon. But this would also be incredibly easy to replicate in a mocktail form by just taking some lemonade and muddling some blackberries. I think that would be delicious. And I also did put in a sprig of mint just for a little bit of extra color. I've also had this topped up with tonic water and also topped up with Sprite, and both versions I can confirm taste great. So yes, if you're looking to recreate this cocktail, I did about 1.5 ounces of blackberry whiskey, probably 3/4 of a cup of lemonade, and then topped up the rest with ice. And I would just top up with just a splash of tonic water if you wanted some of that fizz. And then if you want to feel fancy like I did today, add in a little sprig of mint. And it's really, really refreshing. I can see myself enjoying many of these over the course of this summer. But now, without further ado, let's dive into the books. And like I said, if you have already watched my 2023 Whiskies, then you have already heard me sing my praises for these two books here. But if you haven't, and I understand because that video was an hour long, but Blade of Secrets introduces us to, I would call this a soft fantasy world. We do learn the terrain of this world as our characters embark on an adventure and are traveling through the woods. We do visit a few different cities and we learn a little bit more about the political workings of this world and the way that magic is treated in this world. But perhaps because it's a young adult fantasy, it didn't feel like this grand, big, epic world. It definitely felt like a little bit of a smaller lens. We really were just learning about where our characters were in that moment, and the necessary world building was kind of taking place around them as they adventured or traveled to new areas. That said, and perhaps because it's kind of a smaller fantasy, I found this definitely to be really cozy. So if you're looking for that cozy, lower stakes type of read, I would definitely recommend Blade of Secrets. While this duology is a young adult fantasy, our main character Ziva and her romantic interest Kellen are towards the end of their teens. Ziva is 18 and I think Kellen is like 18, 19, 20, around there. So it is slightly more mature, and romance is a part of this book. So there is an exploration of desire and a little bit of romance that takes place on the page. I would say it is quite soft. I would not say that these two books contain smut at all from my recollection, but we do Follow along with Ziva as she experiences her first kiss and feels that romantic desire for the first time towards Kellen, and watch her try and reconcile with those feelings when she's never felt them before. And I've said this before, but one of the main reasons that I loved this duology so much is for the way that Ziva and Kellen's romance was depicted, because Ziva does have, I would say, moderate to severe social anxiety. She is really anxious and closes herself off from the world quite a bit, just because those social encounters and really big, new, busy environments make her feel incredibly uncomfortable. So she doesn't interact with many people outside of her sister very often. So watching her and reading her mental monologue, I guess, as she reconciled with these new feelings and navigated this new terrain with a romantic partner who was so willing to take her hand and then just walk beside her when she didn't want to be touched, I found it to be so incredibly endearing. They did an incredible job of overcoming some obstacles that were in their path and perhaps some truths that were not entirely said at the beginning of their relationship. But they came together and I was just rooting for them every step of the way. I wanted them to be happy. And I will give a slight spoiler by saying that this does contain a happily ever after. There is a very big cliffhanger at the end of Blade of Secrets. So I wouldn't say this is entirely low stakes, because I was fairly nervous at the end of Blade of Secrets. And I was very happy that I was able to get my hands on Master of Iron shortly thereafter so that I could figure out how that part of the plot was going to be resolved. In addition to Ziva, we also follow along with Ziva's sister, Temra. And Temra is kind of Ziva's polar opposite. She gets along really, really well with people. And I think something that is often the case, Ziva doesn't tend to see Temra as her own individual person. She just sees Temra as her little sister who she needs to protect. So watching the two of them go through the ups and downs of a sibling relationship was really well done, in my opinion at least. And watching Temra have the confidence to not stand up for her sister, but stand up for herself and what she wanted to her sister and communicate that effectively so that they could still have a really supportive relationship but have the space to do their own things. Levenseller did an incredible job on that front, in my opinion. And finally, the fourth member of our band of heroes is Petrick, who is a scholar that is in Temra and Ziva's hometown and really wanted to have an interview with Ziva and learn a little bit more about the magic that she wields and the weapons that she creates. Ziva did not want to talk to him, but then when Ziva and Temra need to go on the run, he kind of tags along, and it's easier to let him come along with them than it is to turn him loose and perhaps let him tell their pursuers where they are headed. So those are our four main characters. Let me rewind a little bit and read you the summary for Blade of Secrets, because this will describe the plot a whole lot better than I can, or at the very, very least, it will describe the plot a whole lot quicker than I can. So the summary here says, 18-year-old Ziva prefers metal to people. She spends her days tucked away in her forge, safe from society and the anxiety it causes her, using her magical gift to craft unique weapons imbued with power. Then Ziva receives a commission from a powerful warlord, and the result is a sword capable of stealing its victim's secrets. A sword that can cut far deeper than the length of its blade. A sword with the strength to topple kingdoms. When Ziva learns of the warlord's intentions to use the weapon to enslave all the world under her rule, she takes her sister and flees. joined by a distractingly handsome mercenary and a young scholar with extensive knowledge of the world's known magics. Ziva and her sister set out on a quest to keep the sword safe until they can find a worthy wielder or a way to destroy it entirely. So we have here a gang of misfit individuals on a quest. And if you have watched my most loved tropes video, you know that those are two tropes I absolutely adore. And while I wouldn't say that Ziva and Kellen are enemies, I would definitely say that they're adversaries. They're not exactly friends at the outset of this book. There are tensions there because Ziva doesn't know how to reconcile her attraction to this man because she has never felt attraction to another individual before. And Kellen isn't exactly happy about the way that he has been recruited in to be their hired bodyguard. So they don't exactly get off to the very best start, but I was rooting for them very early on. I will say, in terms of content warnings, Temra and Ziva's parents are deceased in this book, so there is a little bit of grief depicted on the page, or at the very least, the weight that Ziva has felt in wanting to care for and protect her sister because she is her sole guardian, really. That is depicted on the page, as well as a little bit more of how that grief may have influenced some of Ziva's social anxieties and her desire not to leave the house. But I found the way that Levenseller wrote about grief and anxiety and self-doubt to be incredibly well done. And there were certain turns of phrases that she used, that she wrote, that were so beautiful and really struck a chord in me. So if you are looking for a somewhat low stakes YA fantasy with a heavy emphasis on character development, character exploration, and romance, I would highly recommend this duology. I haven't really delved into what takes place in Master of Iron because the events of this book obviously spoil what takes place in the first book. But I found Master of Iron to be an incredible sequel. The further character development and development of the relationship that took place in this book was incredibly well done. And I also really enjoyed the way the world was further explored too. I found the conclusion of Master of Iron fit really well within this duology. And I think there's something special about fantasy standalones or fantasy duologies because they do show that like you can wrap up a really succinct story really well in just one short book or two short books. I will say, however, that unlike some small fantasy series, we follow the same cast of characters throughout these two books, and Blade of Secrets does end on a cliffhanger. So if you're going to read it, make sure you have Master of Iron nearby or at least readily accessible. So I would highly recommend this duology if you are looking for a quick, fast-paced, easy to read YA fantasy series duology to read this summer. I think this would make a great beach read. I initially read Blade of Secrets in the summer and just flew through it in the course of an afternoon or so. So it's very quick to read, but I found the characters incredibly entertaining and lovable and just the best way to pass an afternoon. Let me know down in the comments below if you have read these books or if you are planning on reading these books, because I would love to revisit these characters by chatting with you down below. But for now, that is it for me. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will be back soon with a new one. Bye for now.